The next two walls are somewhat difficult, somewhat technical, so I'm going to talk about them while we're here. First of all, the front wall. The front wall has something called a header going over it. This is a header, and that header supports the load. So if there's something heavy right on top, it won't break this. The load will get transferred to the side, and then the weight will come down over here. So these are always above a window or a door. You'll have a header, and it's the same thing in your house at home. There's something, usually it's built out of 2x6s on end with a piece of foam or OSB in between it. So this header will support the load, but the problem is a lot of people will put it in before they've nailed in the header to the side. So if you nail the sides on first, it's really hard to nail in from the edge, right? So you have to think about the order. We always, just like on the window wall, we start from the inside and work outwards. So we're going to put this part together first, and then we slide it in here and then nail it. So this takes 3 nails into the header on each side, and then when you center this, you can tell that they didn't quite get it centered. The easiest way to do this is to figure out the center of this piece right here. So this is about 15 inches. What's half of 15? 7.5. 7.5. So I'm going to put a line at 7.5. We know the whole wall was 20 inches, right? So what's half of that? 10. So now you see what I need to do to center it. I just need to slide this header over until those 2 lines match up, and then we can nail that in. When you nail it in, you're going to need some nails in the top of the header as well. So you don't want it just in your king stud, but you want it in your header as well. If this is off, when somebody walks up to your door, they'll see that it's slanted because your trim will all be off. So this is critical that it is centered right here. The next one, the window wall, is even more complicated. I brought this plant. The critical piece on the window wall is that the opening is centered. Okay? A lot of people want to put the studs and line the studs up 8 inches on center and nail those in. But if you look at a house, the windows are on the sides and the door is always centered, right? Or off-center depending. They don't move the door and they don't move the windows depending on where the studs are. It's not like they slide it over and it's in a random spot. The windows always take priority. The doors always take priority. So when it says the opening is centered in this wall, that means this window is going to take priority. It means it's going to go in first. No matter if the stud says 8 inches on center is right here, I'm not going to put a stud down through the center of my window, right? So I'm going to take my tape measure, and again, I know that this window is 10 by 10, so I should have an opening the size of 10 by 10, which I do. So what's the middle of that? 5. Right. So I got to mark at 5, and then my whole wall is 35 inches, right? 2 foot 11. So if I bend my tape in half and I bring it down to 35, exactly in the middle is 17 and a half. So what's half of 35? 17 and a half. So I'm going to put a mark at 17 and a half, which we already have there. Look at that. We have a mark at the center of the wall, and then I'm going to line this up right there. Now I can put a mark right where I know this window has to be when I slide it out. Now they already marked 8 inches on center. No, they did not. So we're going to come over 8 and then 16. So my cripple is going to go right there. So when I slide this out, I know right where that cripple is going to go. Cripples are what support that window, and they go on top of the header as well. So when you lay this out, we need to start with the inside. We're going to frame this together first, and then we're going to nail our king stud to the side of that. We need to figure out how long those cripples are. What's a good way to do that? Measure it. If I put this down here, I can slide this all to one side, subtract this distance, and divide that in half. right? So if I measure what's left over, I have 8 1/4. So how long are those cripples?
4 and 8.
4 1/8. 4 1/8. So now I can cut my cripples, put them on each side, and that will center this automatically. And then I can nail this to that before I even drop it in here. Make sense? Okay, the last thing, I have a lot of students mess up on this, and it's unfortunate, but they get so excited about nailing this together, they forget its rotation. And so they put it back into the wall just like this. What's the problem now?
Just nail and nail this.
But the window is the same size, so it doesn't really matter.
Markings are off.
Well, if they did it, they put their markings on that one. So is it really a problem if you turn it sideways? It is, because if my cripple is right here, what's supporting this weight?
Just a nail.
Just a nail. There's nothing underneath that. But if I turn it this way, now the whole sill is supported.
Right.
So make sure that your horizontal header and sill is at the base and the top. So when you nail this together, you're going to start from the inside, nail all this together first, and then work outwards. Your window is priority. The reason we have 2 studs lined up right here together is if they would have marked, did you guys mark this? Well, I'll just explain this. Your window would have lined up right here, and there's not enough, it's not going to cover that mark where your stud is supposed to be, 8 inches on center. And so you're going to have to put a second one in there so that it covers that gap. The reason we build a house 16 inches on center or 24 inches on center is because of that plywood. And if the plywood ends right where a stud is, and there's nothing to nail the next piece of plywood to, it's just going to be blowing in the wind there. So we have to have a stud behind it, which is why we need that second board right there. I lost some of you. Excellent. All right. Any questions? All right, let's go work.
Okay, let's fix this.